Glad to be back. Yeah, I would serve.
Good morning. Welcome to All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church on this sort of chilly Sunday morning, but it's a beautiful day. We're glad you came out. We're glad you have joined us. This is a church that's built on covenant, not creed. We are here together in our pledge to treat one another respectfully and to try to walk through the world with compassion, to learn more about one another, and to treat even those with differing paths and opinions and beliefs than us respectfully. We don't all have to think alike, to love alike, to walk with compassion for our fellow humans and the earth. So we do what we can to grow in spirit, to grow towards understanding, and to grow towards truth. Whoever you are, whatever your age, race, origin, orientation, background, status, ability, identity, if you care to be here with us in a spirit of mutual respect, you are always, always welcome. We front load these gatherings with a little bit of information before we get into the elevating and contemplating matters of worth. Miss Susan? Rebecca, we have a board member who's coming to share information with you. This is Rebecca Tuggle, our treasurer.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here this morning. Good to see you. Our volunteer of the month for the month of January, we picked one person out of the congregation or friends of the congregation who has contributed quite a bit to the congregation and the upkeep of the church, etc. And for this month of January, our volunteer of the month is Barbara Dager, who is actually here today. Of course, Barbara is a longtime member of this congregation. She does a lot with religious education in tandem with Susan as far as adult RE is concerned. She writes fabulous poetry, which she shares with us from time to time, and we are just happy to have her here in the congregation. So again, congratulations, Barbara. Also, each month we do give away the plate. Give away the plate is basically any and the basket, we don't pass the basket anymore. We used to, but we now station it at the entry or exit point, entry and exit point to the sanctuary. And it's just there, that basket. If you would like to contribute anything, please, and thank you, since I am the treasurer. But the giveaway, the plate money is any money that is put in that basket that is not specifically designated for pledge. Okay. And so this month, that giveaway the plate money is going to the New Orleans New Year's Day Tragedy Fund, which is sponsored by the Greater New Orleans Foundation. They are a 501c3 organization. We tend to try to keep that within the community, but we felt that this was bigger than all of us. Plus, the Greater New Orleans Foundation does quite a bit with regards to environmental issues, and as well to racial and basically inclusion and equity in New Orleans as well as around the state. So that is where your money would be going to. If you have not done your pledge for 2025, I ask you and urge you please to do so. We are trying to come up with a budget for 2025 and we have not done that yet, and we are hitting mid-January now. So there are forms in the foyer. If you have any questions about that, it can be a one-time donation. Anything that you can give to help this congregation keep going, especially paying our minister and religious educator, that would be greatly appreciated. So thank you.
Okay. We have been having a conversation this morning, Reverend Barbara and I, that she is about to go away for a bit on sabbatical, and that we would maybe like to have a new member in gathering. To the people that have been attending a while who are interested in membership, we would like to have a ceremony to welcome you into the congregation. That may or may not happen next week, or it may happen in early February. That we're still working on that, but we'll definitely get the word out quickly if it does turn out to be next week. And we would just like to go ahead and bring in these wonderful potential members that we have attending right now to let you know that you're welcome, and we look forward to you being members. Two things. World Religion Day is coming up January 26th. It's from 2 to 5 p.m. at the Highland Center, which we have some wonderful people from the Highland Center with us here today. It's a representation of the religious diversity of Shreveport-Bossier, which you would be surprised maybe to know is great. We've had as many as 18 different faith traditions represented in the past. And the afternoon includes table displays in the gym, as well as panel discussions on the big questions in the chapel with representatives from different faiths. And so we encourage you to attend. And if you are with another faith tradition and you haven't gotten the email that went out this weekend, please talk to me after the service. We'd love to get you involved. Also, the Highland Blessing Dinner, speaking of the Highland Center, we generally serve at that dinner. We host that dinner on the first Thursday of every month. In February, we are trading with First Presbyterian. They have an event on their usual night, which is the 13th, the second Thursday. And so we are going to co-host on the second Thursday, February 13th. So mark the calendars. If you haven't come to help with that before, it's a fun volunteer thing. It goes by fast. There are two tasks. You can sit and eat the meal, which is like, we have a wonderful cook from New Orleans who makes incredible food. And you can sit and eat the meal with the guests, or you can be a server, which is essentially the wait staff of the dinner. And it's served family style when people are at round tables with real tablecloths and real dishes. And so we try to have it be a dinner that has dignity and builds community, but we feed anybody that comes to the door. All right. On that note, I'm going to ask you to kind of get into the spirit of worship. Let yourself rest back into the pew. Let your shoulders come down from your ears. Maybe take a deep breath. And as you let it out, you might find that your shoulders can relax even a little more. They tend to creep up during the day. And after the chime, we'll sing together, "Come, come, whoever you are," and the words will be on the screen. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. Rejoice. Rejoice with full hearts, beloved people of blessing. Rejoice. May this time of worship celebrate what we know at our core, that blessings are real and ours to claim and radiate even in the face of blatant injustice, that blessings are abundant and ours to revel in and pass along even as we stare down despair. That blessings are abundant in the person of people like Maria Kari, our guest today, who fight for justice. That blessings are transformational and ours to be challenged by as we grow towards the faith that we know we can be. For as the poet Toy Derricotte has told us, joy is resistance. And as Audre Lorde has reminded us, joy threatens the oppressor because it is a source of energy for change. Therefore, rejoice. May I have some help with our children's chalice lighting? And Taha, can you go ahead and move up closer so that you'll be ready? Thank you. You can even come help us if you would like to. We light this chalice to celebrate Unitarian Universalism. This is the church of the open mind. This is the church of the helping hands. This is the church of the loving heart. Together, with mind, hands, and heart, we care for the earth and for each other. Thank you all so much. Try to light that. Come on. Huh? Oh. Thank you, Phoebe.
This is an excerpt taken from Angela Davis's book, Are Prisons Obsolete? And if you don't know who Angela Davis is, she's like a very famous civil rights activist who herself was a political prisoner and kind of came back into prominence during the 2020 George Floyd protests. What would it mean to imagine a system in which punishment is not allowed to become the source of corporate profit? How can we imagine a society in which race and class are not primary determinants of punishment? Or one in which a punishment itself is no longer the central concern in the making of justice? An abolitionist approach that seeks to answer questions such as these would require us to imagine a constellation of alternative strategies and institutions, with the ultimate aim of removing the prison from the social and ideological landscapes of our society. In other words, we would not be looking for prison-like substitutes for the prison, such as house arrest safeguarded by electronic surveillance bracelets. Rather, positing decarceration as our overarching strategy, we would try to envision a continuum of alternatives to imprisonment, demilitarization of schools, revitalization of education at all levels, a health system that provides free physical and mental health care to all, and a justice system based on reparations and reconciliation rather than retribution and vengeance. The creation of new institutions that lay claim to the space now occupied by the prison can eventually start to crowd out the prison so that it would inhabit increasingly smaller areas of our social and psychic landscape. Schools can therefore be seen as the most powerful alternative to jails and prisons. Unless the current structures of violence are eliminated from schools in impoverished communities of color, including the presence of armed security guards, and unless schools become places that encourage the joy of learning, these schools will remain the major conduits to prisons. The alternative should instead be to transform these schools into vehicles for decarceration. Thank you.
Now we're going to sing. I'll ask you, oh, no, we're not. We're going to do the unison affirmation. I will ask you to rise in body or spirit. The words will be on the screen, and you can say them with us as you are comfortable. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve human need, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the sacred. Thus do we covenant with each other. Thank you. And now we're going to sing. There is more love somewhere. I'll now ask Kevin Henry to come and join us to read The Bridges Yuri Built, How Yuri Kochiyama Marched Across Movements. Oh, no, they can stay.
The Bridges Yuri Built. Yuri Kochiyama was born Mary Yuriko Nakahara on May 19, 1921 in San Pedro, California. She was Nisei, which meant that her parents came from Japan, but she and her brothers were born in the United States. Even though the Nakaharas were one of the few Japanese-American families in town, Yuri always felt like she belonged in San Pedro. Yuri loved the sweet things in life, poetry, hymns, hikes and bike rides by the sea, baseball games, and what the Bible said about compassion and treating others with kindness. More than anything, Yuri loved people. She reported for the local paper, volunteered with the Girl Scouts, and taught Sunday school. Any club or crew she could join, Yuri was eager to count herself a member. One dark December day in 1941, big news boomed from the radio. Japanese planes had bombed Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. It wasn't long before two men in black suits stood at her door. "Can I help you?" Yuri asked. Like two great gusts of wind, the men rushed past her, whirling around the house, knocking over books and plants. They grabbed her father and ushered him out the door. "Wait," Yuri shouted, but just like wind, the men disappeared as swiftly as they'd come. That night, Yuri's mother cried until her eyes had no tears left to give. The men were government agents. They had taken her father in for questioning. They believed he was a spy just because he was Japanese. "But we're American too," Yuri exclaimed. Weeks later, Yuri's father was released. He was so frail and sick that he seemed to waver on the border of life and the beyond. Yuri looked in his eyes and saw a ghostly man who did not recognize her. By the next day, he was gone. His death plunged her into startling sorrow. Lost in her grief, Yuri didn't notice the world around her beginning to change. After Pearl Harbor, the United States declared war on Japan. Suddenly, the neighbors turned their backs on Yuri and her family. They glared at them in the street or walked right past them without a glance or greeting. For the first time, she felt like an outsider in her own town. By the winter, all Japanese American people were forced to board trains heading far, far away to concentration camps that would hold them for the remainder of the war. The Nakaharas were taken to the Santa Anita racetrack, where they would have to live before being assigned to a camp. Their tiny rooms stank of horses and hay and held only a cot and one dingy light hanging from the ceiling. After several months, the Nakaharas were transferred to a camp in Jerome, Arkansas, 1,800 miles away from their home in San Pedro. The camps were a wasteland with block housing, ringed with barbed wire fences, and dotted with watchtowers where guards oversaw the imprisoned people. In summer, the humid heat made them sweat and stick to their clothes, but winters were worse. With only a potbelly stove in each barrack to keep them warm, the people struggled not to freeze. And all year, the Jerome rainfall turned the ground swampy with mud. It isn't fair, Yuri thought. If America is really the land of the free, how can we be treated like prisoners in our own country? Still, people built furniture out of driftwood and sewed curtains and bedspreads to brighten up the barracks. They planned activities and planted flowers. They did everything they could to make the camps feel a little more like home. Yuri had never met so many other Japanese people. They came from parts of California and the islands of Hawaii, from farms and fishing towns. In the mess halls, they told her their stories over dinner. They taught her about Japanese culture and had long conversations about what it meant to be Japanese in America. Many young Nisei men had chosen to join the U.S. Army, eager to prove their loyalty to their country. But lots of people at the camps were angry with the government, and Yuri was starting to understand why. When the Nisei soldiers came to visit the camp, Yuri was the first to greet them. "What's your name? Where are you from?" she asked, bursting with questions. A handsome soldier stepped forward and answered, "I'm Bill Kochiyama," he said, with a glint in his eye. "I come from Manhattan Island." "What island is that?" Yuri wanted to know. Bill hoped to show her someday. At the camp party, they danced the night away. After he left, Jerome returned to boot camp. Yuri wrote to Bill every week, then once, twice, 3 times a day. Before long, their messages became love letters, and Bill asked Yuri to marry him. In a letter, Bill told her, "I feel so lucky to have someone to write and talk to all the time. All the Nisei boys here feel lonely, and all the other soldiers stay away from us. They hardly get any letters at all." Yuri hated to think of all those brave young men missing their homes and families and friends. What could she do to help them, she wondered. Then Yuri had a big idea. What if she wrote letters to all the Nisei soldiers so they wouldn't feel alone? But she couldn't do it by herself. Yuri gathered up her Sunday school class and told them her plan. They called themselves the Crusaders. They sent letters with candy, little songs, and daily doodles. They told the soldiers tales about life at camp and the friends they had made. Mostly, they wrote about how proud they were of them. When the boys wrote back, they thanked their new pen pals over and over. The letters made them feel loved. Soon, the Crusaders' letter-writing campaign spread to other camps. They reached more than 3,000 soldiers in all. When the war was over and the camps were closed, Yuri packed her bags and boarded a train to New York City, Bill's hometown, to start their new life. Finding work in New York was not easy. She looked for a job as a waitress, but all the restaurants turned her away. "We don't hire Japs," they said as they slammed doors in her face. Finally, she got a job in a coffee shop downtown. The dishwashers and cooks were black men and women. They told her about their lives, about the hardships and the hate and how they were barred from living in certain neighborhoods, working certain jobs, or eating in restaurants reserved for white people only. Yuri felt anger bubble like lava inside her chest. She wanted to knock down the country and build it back up into a place where everybody was free and treated fairly. Yuri and Bill got a little place in Harlem, hardly bigger than a train car, and together they made a family. Harlem was a new world, the center of black culture in New York. Yuri and Bill joined the Harlem Parents Committee, a group that was fighting for safer streets and better schools in the neighborhood. At one protest, mothers and fathers sat with their babies in the road. They held tight to one another, stopping the flow of cars and shutting down the busy street. How powerful it was to know that together the crowd of protesters could not be broken through. And suddenly Yuri knew this was the work she was meant to do. She knew black people were working to fight against racist laws in New York and all across the country. The fight was called the Civil Rights Movement, and Yuri longed to join. But would she be accepted? She remembered the war and how people treated her as a suspect, an outsider, because she wasn't one of them. But she remembered the camps as well. Even though she wasn't black, she knew how it felt to be denied freedom because of the color of her skin. If the movement will have me, I must do everything in my power to help, she decided. But how to begin? Yuri started just by showing up. Every meeting, every action, every protest, she was present. She took notes and made signs. She passed out petitions and dropped flyers around town. She joined a freedom school and studied the writings and speeches of leaders like Fannie Lou Hamer, Marcus Garvey, and Malcolm X. Her journals overflowed with pages of news from the front lines of the movement, the marches in Mississippi, the sit-ins in Georgia, and the names of all the activists who'd been jailed in Alabama. People started to wonder, who was this little Asian lady who sat in the back of every meeting? But the more she showed up, the more they invited her in. Soon everyone in Harlem knew if you needed a place to stay, just write to Yuri and she'd give you food and shelter. People came in droves, orphans and runaways, tourists and New Yorkers, journalists from Japan, musicians from Hawaii, and freedom fighters from every corner of the South. When all beds were full, Bill slept in the bathtub and Yuri crawled into the crib with the baby. Every Saturday night they threw an open house. Neighbors and strangers, artists and activists came. They played the ukulele, they danced the hula, they sang. They read speeches and spoke of action and change. From sundown to dawn, the party raged on. No matter who arrived, everyone was made to feel they belonged. Folks called the apartment Grand Central Station for the thousands of people who passed through. And one day, Malcolm X, the great freedom fighter, came to visit. Yuri and Bill were hosting a group of visitors from Japan, victims who had survived the Hiroshima bombings during World War II. Malcolm came to meet them, and the whole neighborhood showed up to greet him. In Yuri's crowded living room, he stood tall and loomed large, and when he spoke, the room fell hushed. He told them about parts of the world where black and brown people lived under the control of white Western nations, places where people suffered racism and poverty. He shared what he had learned of the histories of Africa and Asia and what they had in common. He urged them to protest America's new war in Vietnam and told them that the struggle of the Vietnamese people was the same struggle of people of color all over the world. Soon after, Malcolm left for a long trip to a place called Mecca. As he traveled, he sent postcards to Yuri with stories about movements and uprisings in many countries. The people here, he wrote, are fast leaping out of the past into the future. Yuri treated each postcard like a precious treasure, and over the months her collection grew. As Malcolm wrote to her, she wrote to others too. Yuri learned of activists all over the world imprisoned by their own governments and the governments of other countries for speaking out. In the movement, they called these activists political prisoners. Since powerful forces wanted to keep the activists far away from their communities, they had little hope of going home. So she began to write them letters. She sent letters with money and books, letters with news from the movement to remind them that every day, on the outside, people were working to free them. Through many long nights, she stayed up at her kitchen table, writing, writing, writing. In the prisons, the name Yuri Kochiyama spread like wildfire. Everyone knew Yuri was the first person you called when you got in and the first person you called when you got out. I'm always here for you, she promised. When Malcolm came back from Mecca, Yuri rejoiced. She couldn't wait to hear all he had learned from his travels and his new plans for the movement. On February 21st, 1965, less than a year after his return, she sat in the front row of the Audubon Ballroom in Harlem, anxiously awaiting his speech. But just as Malcolm stepped up to the stage, Yuri heard several loud bangs. For a moment, the room was silent and still. Then people started to scream. They ran for the exits. Yuri ran to the stage. She cradled Malcolm's head in her lap. She cried his name over and over. But Malcolm was gone. That night, no one, not even Bill, could soothe Yuri's grief. What's the point of trying to change this world, she thought. There's too much hate keeping us apart. She looked out of her window at the long stretch of Harlem streets and the midnight sky above. While her spirit felt as blue and dark as that sky, something inside her ached for light. Then Yuri remembered Malcolm's visit, the words he had spoken in the very spot where she sat. We are all part of one another. All across the world, people of different races from all different places were bowed and bound in struggle. Their struggles were not always the same, but they were caused by the same forces of racism and injustice. In her mind's eye, Yuri imagined all those people linked by a long and winding bridge, a bridge they would build to connect to one another, to reach and teach one another. They would march across this bridge hand in hand and work together toward a new world of their own making, a future world where everyone was free. If there is ever a person or movement who I can help, I will do everything in my power to be of use to them. From that night forth, Yuri leapt into her work as a freedom fighter, giving shelter, joining protests, making speeches, and lending her voice, her writings, her networks to the many people from many movements who sought her aid. With every step, every person she met, every letter she sent, she kept on building her bridge.
We know that was a little bit longer book than we usually do, but we thought it was a really wonderful example of someone working for her own freedom and the freedom of others. And it was her great-granddaughter who wrote that book, who'd never really known a lot about her until even though she'd known her until she attended her funeral, she didn't realize what a big deal her great-grandmother really was. So it's a beautiful book. Let's sing our children and youth out to their a little bit shorter class today. Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go. I ask you to join me in the spirit of meditation and prayer. Spirit of life, ever adapting and renewing, we come together this morning with yearnings that do not match. We yearn for stability, for even one moment of feeling like we know what is going on or what is going to happen. And yet we also yearn for change. In the face of so much evidence to the contrary, we ache for a world that turns aside from racism and violence and dehumanization and disregard for suffering. We pray for a change in the illness and grief and isolation and incarceration and vulnerability of our loved ones. We reach for connections that will remind us that we are worthy as we are, and we reach for connections that will help us become our best selves. Hold us in the heart of both and. Cradle us in the mystery. Source of wonder, move us to express and live in gratitude for the beauty of this world. for the loving people in our lives, and for this day of possibility. If we are losing hope, help us to be hope. To this we add the meditations of our hearts as we enter into a time of silence.
Um, Good morning, everybody. So, before I introduce the speaker, I just kind of wanted to give some background as to how this came about, this event. So basically, UUJME, it stands for Unitarian Universalists and Allies for Justice in the Middle East. And that was started by a small group of us from like different religions, like we have Jewish, Christian, Muslim, UU. Carrie and Susan and Abbas and I had started, and a few other people had started it around last year after October 7th had happened, and we were very upset with what was happening in Gaza and wanted to do something. And then it kind of, became like a full-on chapter. And UUJME is a national organization that's been around since 1971 that's been advocating for the Palestinian cause. And then, so the way we got connected with the Free Aafia movement was we had invited Nida Abu Bakr to speak last July, who's the daughter of Shukri Abu Bakr, who's also a political prisoner. And they had been, that was a really successful event. I think everybody really loved Nida. I think she's kind of like a part of our family now. And they were doing another event in Dallas and were looking for a venue. And so I had connected them with Kathy Hackett, who is with UUJME Dallas. And so that's when I learned about the Free Aafia movement. And I had heard about Dr. Aafia's case like in passing in the news, but not really a whole lot. And I would just encourage everyone who maybe has questions or doesn't really know a lot about Dr. Aafia to just like read about the case and just know that a part of why UUs do the work they do is because to fight injustice. And this is one of the worst cases of injustice that you can think of. And part of what Unitarian Universalism teaches is for people to speak out for those who have who are the most marginalized voices. And this is one of the most marginalized people I can honestly think of, unfortunately. And especially in the wake of the tragic attacks that happened in New Orleans, I think it's really imperative for us to really stand with the Muslim community rather than shying away from these kinds of topics. So yeah, and now without further delay, I'm going to introduce Maria Kari. Maria Kari is a human rights lawyer and writer. After graduating law school in Canada, she briefly did corporate law and then pursued a master's at Georgetown, after which she moved to Texas and set up her legal charity, which provides free and low bono services for the vulnerable and oppressed minorities. Since the start of the Palestinian genocide, Maria has brought 4 lawsuits against the Biden administration for its failure to protect Palestinian Americans in Gaza. She also represents the world's most oppressed woman, Aafia Siddiqui. Maria believes in the power of the media to humanize her clients, and her clients' cases are frequently featured in mainstream media outlets, including CNN, The Guardian, and The Washington Post. And so now I will introduce Maria. And unfortunately, because of the weather, she cannot come with us in person, but she's going to be here on Zoom.
Thank you, Taha. Can everyone hear me okay? Thank you, Reverend. Thank you, Taha. My name is Maria Kari, and I am an attorney, and I represent Dr. Aafia Siddiqui. I'm so grateful to your community for sharing this space. And here in Houston, we stand in solidarity with the community in New Orleans in light of the horrifying tragedy. You guys are front of mind when it comes to our prayers. And the story that I'm going to share with you all today is an extraordinary decades-long saga of perhaps the worst miscarriage of justice to have taken place in the aftermath of 9/11 and the subsequent war of terror. On March 30th, 2003, Aafia Siddiqui, my client, was in Pakistan, Karachi, Pakistan, driving with her 3 children when her car was surrounded by a bunch of men. Ahmed, her eldest son, who was an American citizen and 6 years old at the time, was snatched from Aafia. He would be taken to a prison in Kabul, Afghanistan, where he would remain for 5 years until the Red Cross helped his aunt locate him. Mariam, Aafia's 3-year-old daughter, also an American citizen, would be stripped from her mother's care, forcibly adopted into a white Christian family. She would have her name changed to Fatima, and she would remain with this family for 6 years until Hamid Karzai, the then president of Afghanistan, helped locate her. Afia's third child, Suleiman, was only 6 months old at the time, and he was likely killed during the abduction. Ahmed, who was himself a 5-year-old boy, remembers seeing his baby brother fall on the ground and a pool of blood form around his head. What happened to Aafia herself has only recently been confirmed by us. We now have a lot of evidence after 2 years of investigation and 4 trips to Afghanistan that Aafia was, in fact, one of the many victims of the CIA's flawed intelligence that led to the detention and the torture of so many innocent Muslims post 9/11. As a result of this faulty intelligence, Aafia was sold by the Pakistani government to the US government for $55,000 bounty. Aafia would spend 5 years in CIA's rendition to torture program, which is just a fancy legal term for being kidnapped and then detained without charge. She was held at various CIA black sites in Afghanistan, including at Bagram prison, where we now have a lot of evidence confirming that Aafia was raped and tortured and made to believe that she was watching the torture of her children. So Aafia spends 5 years in Afghani prisons, and it becomes evident that she's innocent. And the Americans at this point say she's free to go. She's given a young boy. She's told that this is her son, Ahmed. She's given some magazines so that she can catch up on the world that she's missed out on after being in custody for 5 years. And she's put on a bus to Ghazni province, where she's told that her daughter will be waiting for her. And that could have been the end of Aafia's story, except the Pakistani government had a problem on their hands, because in the 5 years that Aafia was in Afghani prisons, she had become larger than life in Pakistan. She was and is still known as a daughter of Pakistan. And at one point, you had 1 million people march on the streets for Aafia's freedom. So for the Pakistanis to now admit that they'd sold the daughter of Pakistan to American rape and torture wouldn't do. And their plot was to call her in as a suicide bomber and have her killed in a confrontation with the Afghan National Police. And again, this is something we've now been able to confirm as a result of trips to Afghanistan, during which we actually found the brave Afghan man who got in the way of Aafia and the guns of the Afghan National Police. And he's going to be one of our witnesses. After nearly being killed by the police, Aafia gets detained at the Afghan police headquarters. And at this point, as far as the Afghanis are concerned, the only real crime she's committed is being in their country without a visa. But then the Americans show up demanding to see Aafia. And when the Americans enter the room, Aafia peeks from behind a curtain and she spooks one of the soldiers, who yells, "She's on the loose," and he shoots her 2 times in the abdomen. They realize they've just shot an unarmed civilian. She's been in captivity for 5 years. She's already a tiny woman, but at this point, she's less than 100 pounds. But the CIA still concoct the story that Aafia lunged for the soldier's gun and tried to shoot up the place. We actually have, as evidence, a video from earlier in the day that shows that the bullet holes that they said Aafia shot at the wall at were already there from before this incident happened. So Aafia gets taken to the Southern District of New York. That court has a 99% conviction rate. She's tried for attempted murder of US officials, and the trial is deeply flawed. And again, I will say this is not to any fault of the judge or even the prosecutors, because they're being misled by the CIA, who till this day don't acknowledge to having held Aafia for 5 years in Afghanistan. And as a result of this deeply flawed trial, ultimately Aafia gets 86 years sentence at FMC Carswell, a federal medical prison for women in Fort Worth, Texas. So for those of you who are hearing this story for the first time, it's going to be mind-boggling and shocking to you that this happened. And so few of us know about it here in the US. And in Pakistan, it's a household name, it's a household story. But the reality is, and I say this as a Pakistani Muslim woman, the deadly combination of Aafia's brown skin and her faith make Aafia's story not as uncommon as one might think, right? Aafia's only crime to be is to be caught up in America's post 9/11 war of terror and the subsequent anti-Muslim hysteria. So what is Aafia's life like now? I just saw her on Thursday, and today my client is a broken woman. I visit her monthly, and her suffering has only been worsened by the horrifying mistreatment she's being subjected to at FMC Carswell. The ACLU of Texas has called this federal women's prison a house of horrors. This prison not only recently denied Aafia the right to meet with an imam, which is an Islamic priest, there has been 12 prison staff, including a Christian chaplain, who've been convicted of sexually abusing inmates. And that unfortunately includes Aafia, who herself has been raped 2 times at Carswell. So as we meet today, Aafia's case is at a particularly critical point. My co-counsel, Clive Stafford Smith, and I, we've filed a clemency petition with the White House. We're seeking clemency for Aafia from President Biden. And what clemency would do is commute Aafia's sentence to time that she's already served. Because what I've told you is the truth of what happened to Aafia, but let's say you believe none of it. A jail sentence for attempted murder might put somebody away for 10 years, 12 years. An 86-year sentence is truly an extraordinary miscarriage of justice, and it's a death sentence. We also have a public petition in support of this clemency request. And over the weekend, we actually went over 1 million signatures. And I'll share that with you all. You're welcome to add your names to it, because that sort of thing really tells the government what ordinary people like us care about. And where we're at now is that we have just 1 week for President Biden to do the right thing for Aafia. The president has issued pardons for thousands of people in recent weeks, including his son, Hunter Biden. And I thought it was really powerful that Aafia's son, Ahmed, actually wrote a beautiful letter to Biden in which he says, "You've pardoned your son, which any parent would do, and could you please do the same for my mom?" Again, I want to end with a note of thanks to your community for being so receptive to Aafia's plight. This being able to be here with you all is the highlight of my weekend. And just the fact that we're all still thinking about the shameful legacy of the war of terror is important, because it not only terrorized and muzzled the Muslim community 20-something years ago, it's still ongoing, right? Look at the way that brave pro-Palestinian anti-genocide voices are being punished and muzzled today. And I represent a lot of folks who have been arrested on college campuses for speaking on behalf of the Palestinians. I represent Americans who are still stuck in Gaza waiting for this government to evacuate them. And when I was reading about the values that the Unitarian Universalists have, I was particularly moved by some things about your faith that to me feel relevant because they're in common with my faith, and also to Aafia's case, right? So your creed says that no person or official or organization can tell you what to believe. Your creed is to present religious opinions openly without fear of censure or reprisal. And you believe that truth is not absolute, that it changes over time. Could anything be truer of Aafia's case? This is a woman who has been subjected to a lifetime of torture because of her faith and because of the failure of a system that's continuing to act with impunity when it comes to targeting brown and Black bodies. And Aafia's case is a perfect example that truth is not absolute, that the real truth has and can come out over time. So I'm grateful to you all for being receptive to this case, and I thank you all for allowing me to be here with you today.
Thank you so much, Maria. We so appreciate having you here, and we're hoping maybe that when we stop the Facebook feed and when we end the service, that we might rejoin you in the social hall and invite the people who are here to come down for a Q&A. Do you have time for that? And I don't know if we can do we may not be able to do both audio at the same time. Can we?
Yes, I've given myself about 45 minutes to stay behind and talk to you all about any questions you might have about her case.
That's wonderful. We're gonna sing one more time, and then we'll have a little bit of transition time moving back. But again, we thank you so much for being with us today, and for those of us who want to come down and participate in the Q&A, you'll get to see some of our faces as we've gotten to see yours. So thank you very much. We're gonna sing "We'll Build a Land." The words will be on the screen, and Barbara's gonna lead us.
If you will rise in body or spirit. We'll build a land where we bind up the broken. We'll build a land where the captives go free, where the oil of gladness dissolves all mourning. Oh, we'll build a promised land that can be. Come, build a land where all is one family, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll build a land where we bring the good tidings to all the afflicted and all those who mourn, and we'll give them garlands instead of ashes. Oh, we'll build a land where peace is born. Come, build a land where all is one family, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll build a land building up ancient cities, raising up devastations of old, restoring ruins of generations. Oh, we'll build a land of people so bold. Come, build a land where all is one family, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream.
As Carrie makes his way up here, I wanted to first of all thank Maria for the words she said about our faith. To clarify, we are united not by a creed, but by a covenant, by the agreements that we have with each other for how we will be together. A creed would be more of an enforced belief. And I know it probably sounds like a technicality, but I just wanted to clarify that for people who may be visiting for the first time. Carrie, please join us to read the poem by Aafia Siddiqui.
Thank you, Susan, and thank you, Barbara, for, as always, being so hospitable to our UUJME group. And it's my distinct honor to read these words written just almost 2 months ago to the day, untitled by Aafia, but I think there's a certain leitmotif that shines through. Prayers for patience, persevere. Above all, God, my heart's revere. No matter if the storm's severe, persevere, persevere. Far as it seems, help is near, so long as God is to me dear. The tide's on high, hold on, don't fear. Persevere, persevere. Perseverance is God's cheer. Prayer, God is near right here. Despair not, the sky will clear. Persevere, persevere.
Thank you. Amen. Blessed be. Please join us in the social hall if you're able to stay. Thank you.